It's a deliberately vague title. I appreciate it covers quite a lot, talking about security maturity and how to actually kind of mature your organization. I just want to start with a little bit about myself. So my name is Karandeep. I am the head of information security for a company called Travelopia. We're probably one of those companies you've never heard of. You've probably never seen any of the adverts that we do, but we are the world's largest leading experiential travel brand. Some of the things which I like to buy sneakers. Obviously, I like my beard, my memes. Don't ask why, but I don't like cauliflower. There's just something which I've never really enjoyed. Reality TV, much to my wife's annoyance, and smiling, despite what you may see with the evidence in front of you. The picture on the right-hand side, I thought I'd include it because whenever I'm talking about InfoSec to my friends or my family, I look like a raving madman, because I'm always talking to them about the dangers of the things which they post online, or when they're not reading terms and conditions of specific apps. Who remembers a few years ago there was that famous face swapping app which you could do, and then a certain security investigator went through and read through that you were actually giving your data to Russia. Nowadays, I'd imagine that more people would be reluctant to share some of this information given what's currently going on in the world. But back then, 2-3 years ago, it's a completely different environment, different world. So as I mentioned, Travelopia, we are the world's largest leading specialist travel group. There's 10 kind of offerings that we have beneath us with about 36 different companies. We offer everything from luxury jet private tours. They start at around £75,000 per person. As long as you're traveling as a couple, if you travel as an individual, there's about an £8,000 surcharge on top of that. We also offer, on the other end of the spectrum, we do cycling tours, we do walking tours, and a bit of everything in between. You could probably imagine trying to navigate through a global pandemic as a travel business has been fairly challenging. And you'll excuse the pun, but we were actually kept afloat by our yacht businesses. Who knew that millionaires would want to buy yachts during a global pandemic for somewhere else for them to self-isolate? It's one of those great things, obviously working in a travel business of this size, of the kind of offerings that we have. It means that my job as an InfoSec professional isn't just kind of protecting customer information for just a few people going on a couple of these small trips. We've got a lot of doctors that work with us as well because of some of the tours that we do. We've got a lot of health information. We've also got the education business, so we actually have details about children and schools. So we do take it very, very seriously when we talk about the responsibilities that we have as an InfoSec function. A few things which I want to cover today, obviously security awareness, what you can get your board to actually do for you, why I feel obviously security culture is more important than security strategy overall, and what can happen if you get an entire workforce of security conscious individuals. I'm quite glad actually I'm at the end of the day because quite a lot of what I'm going to be speaking about has already been spoken about by others. So it means that my job becomes that little bit easier. So I'll leave you with this slide and I'll do a bit of background to it. So traditionally, security professionals going into organizations and speaking to other businesses and departments have been the blockers. We've been the people to say, don't do this, don't do that. So whenever we go to them and try and get them to come along with us on what it is that we're trying to do, generally you're getting the reaction that you see on the left-hand side over there, which is the go away. The journey that we're trying to go on is taking people with us when it comes to information security and when it comes to actually their responsibility as an individual and as an organizational department. The journey itself, it allows people to be curious about what you're trying to do. It empowers them to believe that security is something which they can be responsible for and also impact on. I'll give you an example. Just about a month ago, had a report from one of our offices that a member of the sales team actually stopped a senior developer from entering the building because she'd never seen him before and he wasn't wearing his company badge. So he ignored her because he was on the phone, ironically enough, to a member of the InfoSec team, walked up the stairs and was then lambasted by this individual to say, can we please see your badge? Like, I don't know who you are. Obviously, they could have taken it in one of two ways to say, I've been here longer than you, sort of thing, but they took it quite well. Actually reported it directly to the InfoSec team, and we've used that in our last InfoSec newsletter to tell people that they are empowered to make some of these decisions. And if something doesn't necessarily look right, we're not going to shout at them if we're doing the right thing and trying to protect the organization. When it comes to information security, we're a company, about 1,800 people in total across Travelopia, across all the entities, across the worldwide. Up until maybe a week ago, we were a team of 4 that actually worked in InfoSec. So we were doing everything from governance, risk, compliance, security operations, security awareness, trying to look at our security culture. Quickly realized when I took over as head of just over 2 years ago that we couldn't do everything. So we needed to come up with a better operating model of who's actually going to be doing what. What we came up with was essentially this, what you see here on the right-hand side, which is the 2 operation models of preventative controls and reactive controls. And what we've done is we've partnered with two partners rather than suppliers that give us specific needs when it comes to our preventative and reactive controls. Partner A on the left, they do our managed pen testing, they do security training for the InfoSec team and for the devs. They also give us some ad hoc incident response services. We've been using them for about 3 years. They've become a core partner of ours. On the right-hand side is a relatively new thing for Travelopia. We've actually now got a partner involved to do our managed endpoint detection and response service, our incident response. They are our managed SOC. They manage quite a lot of our infrastructure when it comes to security incidents. And what that means is my team are then empowered to not have to be SecOps and not have to be the analysts that they were kind of throughout the pandemic. One of the key things that's very important to me is trying to avoid burnout. I'll admit I've suffered from burnout a fair bit in the last couple of years. There's a significant amount of stress that comes with a leadership position, especially in security, and I don't need to kind of explain to everybody in this room the sort of challenges that we all face. One of the key things for me is trying to ensure that my team are regularly actually taking their annual leave and not checking their emails whilst they're on leave. I have a great individual in my team who, despite taking leave, is always messaging me, and I've gone so far as having to block him before, during the time when he's on leave, just so he can't contact me unless it's an actual emergency. We try very, very hard as a team to get together and actually do things as a cohort. We're a very small bunch. We're located kind of pretty much all in the southeast. 2 of my team work out of Crawley, and myself and one of the other in my team, we live out in West London. So if we ever do meet up, it's generally to have a team meeting in the morning and then maybe have a jolly in the afternoon. So it's just a once a month kind of thing if we do need to be in the office. I think that culture, it really makes a difference for people wanting to work for you and also wanting to continue to go above and beyond in those rare circumstances where we may have an incident come in at 5:30 in the evening on a Friday. Security awareness isn't just 1 month a year. So everyone will hear, obviously, that cybersecurity awareness comes up in October. I have purposefully never done a security awareness campaign during the month of October. I do them all year round. I'm constantly doing phishing training. I'm doing newsletters. I'm trying to get people to understand what information security actually is. I don't want people to think it's just a buzzword for that 1 month of the year. Mandatory compliance training is the bare minimum that you could be looking for your people to do. And if that training isn't engaging or relevant to their job, you're really doing it to tick a box. A lot of the training that I've seen in the past, or some of the training providers that are out there and offer you specifics, it's not relevant to the industry you may work in. For example, we're not a bank. We're not going to have the same level of security as a bank. We're a travel company, where 4 years ago, when I first came to the company, people wouldn't lock their laptops when they walked away. Up until recently, it's one of those things that we're going to start measuring. When we go into the office, if we see a laptop lying around, we may go so far as to take the laptop and lock it in a cupboard, especially if it's unlocked. It's one of those things which people are now reporting back to us that they see other people doing it, and we need to become not necessarily the guardians of kind of the office, as it were, but let's get people to understand where the risk is and why we're trying to do what we do. Making the learning relevant. We spoke earlier this morning about juniors coming in and requiring a CISP as an entry-level position. Now, I did my CISP about 3 years ago. One of the hardest kind of exams that I've ever had to do, and I wouldn't put a junior through that without kind of the technical experience in the background. We've got 2 grads recently join us, and we've been very honest with them to say it's unlikely that you're going to do your CISP in your first year, but we are going to give you some security training. We're not looking for them to be able to do absolutely everything. We're looking for them to come to us with fresh ideas and not to come to us with, not necessarily bad skills, but things which we can't unteach. The learning itself isn't just for the InfoSec team, it's also for the board, for the execs, for the other stakeholders in the business. And that brings me nicely onto the next point. Is your board of security? Now, I kind of felt about 2 years ago when I first came into the leadership position that whenever my predecessor would be talking to the InfoSec board, talking to the board about InfoSec, it could be construed that they were uninterested in some of the security initiatives, generally because we were quite focused on FUD, as it's called, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You look anywhere on LinkedIn, it's everywhere. There's always a study to say just how bad things are. There's never a study to say how good things are when you work in InfoSec. And this conference is an example of one of the good things that comes out of information security. We get to meet with our peers and discuss, similar topics and meet with some great vendors about some of their products and tools. Why do your board need to care about security? I mean, it comes down to three things. There's an increasing likelihood of a successful attack. It's just the way that that it operates at the moment. There's no business out there that can ever turn around and say they're never going to have a cyber attack. It's a matter of when, rather than if. Peer interest, boards talk to other boards. They talk to other people in industries. There is now a growing consciousness of the board actually taking responsibility for a certain amount of InfoSec. But how can you actually get them to be interested? Like I mentioned earlier, we're not a bank, so do I need to request £100 million every year for technology? Probably not. Be great to have. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to spend it, but it's not going to come my way. People, process, and technology. Now, I think we've been too focused on technology for quite a long time, especially if you look at IT and also in security, but I like to focus now my strategy around people and processes. The people are obviously the ones that are going to be using the technology, and the processes explain to them why they're doing so and how they actually do so. To give you guys an example, we had to spend last year on technology, and I've made a conscious decision that this year's budget, when I put forward, there's going to be renewal of some technology, but realistically, I'm looking to spend on team development. I'm looking to spend on, security culture and the wider organization, not just on buying a new fancy tool because somebody told me it will stop all my problems. As I've mentioned already, they understand more than we actually give them credit for. My first board meeting, it was quite an interesting experience. I have a lucky kind of disposition to be able to speak to my board at least once a month. I've got a great FaceTime with them. I've got a great cadence just in general with some of the conversations, and they've come to me in the past with some of the things which they've read or some of the things which they've seen. Making security matter to the organization, though, that's been quite difficult. And one of the key things that we decided to do, it may not work in every organization, but it's looking like it may work in the travel industry, is we've linked the information security program directly to a bonusable objective. So anybody that was already on the existing bonus scheme now has an information security element that they have to meet. And if they don't meet that, they won't get their bonus. That goes all the way from the execs to anybody else in the business. It's as simple as that. We've had exec buy-in from it. The messages come directly from the CEO, so I don't have to stand there and talk to the other MDs of brands and saying, if you don't do this, you don't get your bonus. It's just one of those things that, as a business, we're trying to drive that culture that everyone is responsible for information security. We're trying to avoid compliance for the sake of compliance. I don't want to become an audit team of just ticking a box to say, yes, we've done this, we've done this, we've done that. We're looking to obviously increase our security maturity because we were audited by a third party that came in and looked at our policies, procedures, and standards about 18 months ago and worked out that on the overarching cyber maturity kind of capability maturity model, we were around a 1.8, and we made it our target to hit a 3 by the end of this year. I'd say we're probably on track. We're around a 2.4 at the moment, just by putting in the policies and the procedures that we need to have in place. But really, that's what I mean when I'm talking about security maturity, people understanding the specifics of what we're trying to do from a compliance perspective. We've defined success up front. That 3, it's an easy target. People know what it means to be level 3 on the capability maturity model inside our organization. Essentially, for those that haven't seen it, it's policies, procedures, and guidelines are documented, and they're well documented. And if somebody needed to come in and audit them, you've got them readily available. Moving further up the scale with an organization is having them repeatable and also having them kind of automated in certain circumstances. We've been very clear with our purpose and with the message that we're trying to do. So I've become the face of the faceless when it comes to InfoSec. Previously, nobody in the InfoSec team was that confident to speak to other people outside of tech. I've got interviews, not necessarily interviews, sorry, but invites to other kind of steer groups within the organization. So marketing steer groups, I get involved with sales calls, I speak to the finance teams. We do town halls pretty much every month, and occasionally I'll get an invite and come along and say hello to everyone so they know who I am. It also gives us an opportunity to decide and to define, is this strategy working? We need to be very agile as a security function because things are changing faster than we can actually change. So a strategy which I may have put in place at the beginning of last year may not necessarily be the right way for us to be operating now, given world events, given a global pandemic which nobody really foresaw, and then the massive shift to having to work from home. Our culture as an organization becomes more important than just a strategy which is down on paper. We've had to work really, really hard to demystify the mystical. InfoSec, we love a buzzword. We love an acronym, and there's too many of them, and sometimes you can get them confused with other ones. It's just the way it is. So when I'm trying to talk to non-technical people or people outside of the InfoSec function, I try as hard as possible to avoid them. Obviously, sometimes you just can't because that's just what things are called. Is your current arsenal capable of more than it's being given credit for? Now, I spoke earlier with a few of my peers that depending on the tech stack you already have, you're probably duplicating effort. There's probably a tool in your arsenal that's doing more than you give it credit for, just by proxy of you not understanding specifically how that tool works. It may not necessarily be the right thing to go out and say, I need to plug this gap without investigating exactly what your tools are doing as of now. Where's your duplication of effort? So if you are doing more than you need to, what's the point? So as an organization, Travelopia, we never had a centralized tech function until maybe 18 months ago. So what that specifically meant is all of those individual brands and business units had people responsible for tech, but not responsible for information security. And that became my team's responsibility. So they would have created at certain points for audits an InfoSec policy. We never had visibility of it. We didn't know what was in that policy. We didn't know what was in those operating guidelines or procedures. What we're planning to do now and what we've just started on as part of our journey is do once and use many. We've created templates for all of the businesses to adopt as part of their policies. Anything outside of that goes into an exception or a waiver process, and obviously they're tracked over time, and it's dependent on the risk that you're willing to accept as an organization. I spoke about it just a little bit earlier, but culture of an organization eats strategy for breakfast. It's far more important to have security conscious people in an organization that can actually do a lot of the doing, taking away the burden from just the information security team. Strategy obviously is logical for companies' goals, the structures of people around them, whereas culture is what people actually value and what their beliefs are. It means that people are in tune to doing the right thing just for the sake of doing the right thing. Your goals, however, must be strategic, aligned to the organization and aligned to the risk appetite of the organization. It's very difficult to come up with a cybersecurity culture goal if you don't understand what your business's risk appetite is. Different areas of the business, depending on who you ask, will have a different kind of risk appetite. If people want to move at speed and they want to be very agile, they're going to take more risks. They're going to fail fast. But unfortunately, with security, there's not much room to fail. When people are empowered to do the right thing, amazing things happen. Like I touched upon earlier with the individual that stopped somebody in the office. People report phishing emails to us. People report incidents to us that never happened in the past. Part of what we're trying to do now is, you'll have to excuse the term security Avengers, because we spoke about it earlier that the security team are not superheroes, but the rest of the organization can be. They can really do a lot of the work for you. If something doesn't look right, it's reported to you. It means that you avoid situations like the right-hand side, whereas the CISO or the InfoSec team, you suddenly walk into a business unit and everything's on fire because you didn't know that it existed. Successful incidents in the short term, successful incidents over time should decrease, but you will probably see an increase in investigations in the short term. What I mean by that is the differentiator for us as an organization between an incident and an investigation is material harm. If a phishing email had come through and actually caused harm and actually somebody had given away their password and their MFA token, it becomes an incident. But if a user has just reported to us a phishing email, we classify that as an investigation because there has been work done from my team to work out where it's come from. There is a certain level of automated incident response that can reduce the overall noise, but it's never going to be perfect. So anyone that's ever worked in a SOC environment will know, there is such thing as alert fatigue, and things will get missed. If you're constantly having systems singing at you that everything's wrong and everything's on fire, then you're not going to take the one that actually is serious as seriously. That does actually just bring me to my last slide and some key takeaways for you. Practice what you preach. So as an information security team and as an information security professional, are you doing what you expect the rest of the organization to do? If you've asked the organization to avoid sending emails with attachments, how many emails with attachments are you physically sending? Don't assume anything. An old boss of mine obviously used to say to me, you should never assume because it makes an ass out of you and me. So don't assume that the board are uninterested when it comes to security. Try to avoid the FUD, both internally and externally, if not for any reason other than for your own mental health. There's far too much out there just saying that everything's terrible all the time. You can measure success quite quickly. There are some quick wins and some tangible results, and it's not going to happen overnight, and it will never be perfect. So, as the previous talk kind of said, do the best you can.